Hello, everyone. Welcome to Concordia University's Force-Space. Thank you for joining us for today's event, Collectives That Care, Community, and Archival Practice. Now, this is part of The Message is the Medium, which has been an ongoing series of events and expo here at Force-Space with Sundus, Abdul, Hadi, Yassin, NARCY, Al-Salman. But we would like to begin first by acknowledging that Concordia University is located on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. And we respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future, and our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other peoples within the Montreal community. Here at Force-Space, we work with our university community to help mobilize knowledge. We co-create daily activities examining research questions, projects, things happening across the university. We're also running today's event as a live stream Zoom meeting, as well as streaming to YouTube. So those of you joining us by Zoom, if you have any comments or questions, please pop those into the chat. We'll try and read those out during Q&A. Same for you here in the space. If you have any comments or questions, just raise your hand. We'll run a microphone over to you. Okay, with that, it's very much my pleasure to hand the microphone over to the editor-in-chief of Sticky Rice magazine, as well as psychiatrist and affiliate faculty at McGill University, Viet Tran. Viet, over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So my name is Viet. I'm editor-in-chief of Sticky Rice magazine, a multimedia platform showcasing the work of local Asian creatives, led mainly, but not exclusively, by women and queer friends here in Montreal, Tiohtià:ke. And I also want to do like a crowd acknowledgement. Thank you everyone for being here, for being part of this conversation. There'll be a Q&A at the end. So just pay attention, write down your questions, and there'll be an opportunity for you to ask some questions to our panelists. What else do I want to say about myself? So yeah, I mean, this is a great opportunity for Sticky Rice magazine to come back to our editorial roots. Because when we started in 2020, we were doing a lot of online content, volumes and articles, but then our activities branched out to more like community events, which I think is what we became more known for 5 years later. So this is a nice way to come back to our foundations, and I get to interview people whose work I really respect, that I've been following for a long time, and that I've been getting to know over the past few years. So I'm going to go through a round of introductions, and then I'll get into our panel. So first we have our duo from We Are the Medium, and We Are the Medium is a culture-first creative house and production hub dedicated to consultancy and communication through video, music, print, and visual arts. They're responsible for hosting this 3-day retrospective exhibition that is coming to a close today. So Yassin, NARCY, Al-Salman, head of We Are the Medium, formerly known as The Narcissist, is a musician, actor, professor, and multimedia artist based here in Montreal. He was also a pioneer of the Arab hip-hop movement through the Iraqi trio Euphrates in the early 2000s. He's currently teaching one of Canada's only hip-hop courses here at Concordia University. We have Sundus Abdul. Hadi is an artist and writer of Iraqi origin. Her work has been presented around the world, from the United States to Palestine, all the way to New Zealand. Is a sensitive reflection on trauma, struggle, and care. She's the author and illustrator of Shams, a children's book, and of Take Care of Yourself, The Art and Cultures of Care and Liberation, a nonfiction book about care, curation, and community. She's also the founder of Maktaba Bookshop, whose pop-up is right here. Then we have our friends from Never Was Average, who is a community-based creative company specializing in the creation, design, and production of an inclusive culture across industries. Harry Jermis is the CEO, producer, community engineer, and facilitator at Never Was Average. He's also a mentor at Le Marathon Créatif, where he guides youth from under-resourced communities who aspire to build careers in the creative field. He's also a member of the jury for XP Land and Liberty & Co. in New York, and as a member of the advisory board at Montreal Afro-Canadian Cultural Center. Joanna Chevalier is the creative director and facilitator at Never Was Average. She's responsible for creating inclusive, mindful experiences that merge art, wellness, and community. She also serves as General Director at Le Marathon Créatif, where she leads mentorship programs for youth from under-resourced communities, and her work extends to being a mindfulness facilitator and community care practitioner at the Black Healing Center, advocating for a holistic preventive approach to mental health. And then our trio from Superboat People, whose mission is to foster cultural reconnection and highlight the history and experiences of Cambodian, Laotian, and Vietnamese communities through a renewed perspective. Rémi Shem, researcher and organizer within Asian communities. He's also a social science researcher of Cambodian origin, specializing in governance and natural resource management in the Mekong region. He co-coordinated the Cambodia component of the Histoire de Vie Montréal project in the early 2010s and has since organized various mediation projects focused on community history, memory transmission, and intergenerational relationships. In 2021, he co-founded Le Collectif Superboat People. Marie-Ève Samson is a doctoral candidate in anthropology at the University of Montreal and is of French-Canadian Quebecois origin. Her research interest focuses on experiences of aging, end-of-life caregiving, and support for immigrant elders and their families within the context of changes to social protections and the Quebec health system. She's a co-founder of Superboat People and was also involved in Histoire de Vie Montréal project in the early 2010s. And finally, we have Eva-Loane Ponton-Pham, multidisciplinary artist with a degree in art history and visual arts here at Concordia University. In all her projects, she's committed to highlighting voices that are too often marginalized, focusing on personal and collective narratives that complicate dominant discourses. Of mixed Vietnamese and Canadian heritage, her artistic work explores the confluences of identity and the complexities of cultural transmission within diasporic contexts. Her concerns are primarily expressed and take shape through the mediums of photography, fanzines, documentary, and sculpture. Does anyone want to add something to the bios, or we're good?
I think we're good. Let's go.
Okay, let's go, because we're short on time. We have a tight program. So today,
I just want to add.
Okay, so today's all about archives. It's a community practice, archiving, bookkeeping, and documentation. So we know that in big institutions like libraries, universities, archives are usually shaped by those in power, experts or administrators who decide what counts as important, how it's organized, and who gets access. Mainstream media can often, in a similar way, telling stories in ways that can fit dominant narratives or political and economic interests. The result is that many marginalized voices and lived experience can get left out, reduced, distorted. And sometimes that can even mirror broader dynamics of abuse, where those in power control the narrative to fit the world in their version of reality and can sometimes silence and erase other realities. Sundus, I know you prefer the term rooted communities instead of marginalized. These rooted communities are deeply connected to land, culture, and histories, often against external forces who can try to uproot them through colonization, displacement, and erasure operations. Their stories of daily life, joy, struggle, resistance, cultural healing practices can sometimes be overlooked or reframed in ways that can reinforce harmful stereotypes. So I think for equity, diversity, and inclusion calls not only to recognize what gets excluded, but understanding the structural conditions and power dynamics that produce the exclusion. And that's why community and grassroots archiving takes a different approach. They're relational, they're contextual, they're collective, they center the voices of the communities themselves. And by preserving things like oral histories, photography, photographs, music, books, and records of activism in everyday life, we open space for expanding consciousness, truth-telling, and more. So my first question is, how do you go about preserving and sharing your narratives, culture, or knowledge in ways that can either complement, challenge, or align with institutional archiving and mainstream media, or a mix of both? And in doing so, how does that reclaim power and promote healing?
Mike? I think for Sundus and I'll speak for myself first. I think, I started making art in 2000 when I started studying here at the institution. And I quickly started gaining further knowledge of self, which I had attained through being a part of hip hop culture or being a practitioner or a listener to hip hop culture. Started realizing who I was in the grand scheme of planet Earth and story of planet Earth. So instantly, when we got sucked into the war on terror and having to kind of counter this huge wave of misrepresentation in the public, the first thing that we started doing, and when I started studying comm studies specifically, is I started not necessarily tackling the presentation that was given of us, but just creating our own natural one through art. And I think art was the main vocation. You know, we were involved in a lot of activist work and on the streets work, but I think the art was the most powerful and most long-standing form of archiving that we could create, because it was in real time and it would last forever, whether it's music or merchandise or postering or digital art. It was the only way that I knew how to express myself without anybody filtering my process, right? So I would say just doing it initially and not thinking about the long-term plan was the most important thing and the least challenging way to express myself at a time where we were being suppressed vocally, you know.
I'd add to that that aside from the practice of art, and I think both Yassin and I have a very rich artistic practice that we're, you know, constantly cultivating. But for me, I found it in books. I always sought representation in books, and it's something that for a long time maybe I was looking in the wrong places, or let's just be real, in mainstream spaces, you're not going to find much representation that really spoke to me on a deep level as an Iraqi woman, as a Muslim woman, as an Arab woman growing up here in the West. So not just that, growing up here in the West at a time of rampant Islamophobia, in a time of a war in my homeland that was being, you know, illegally led by our neighbors in the South, but really just like in the media, it was always spoken about in a way that we deserved it in a way, or we were either victims or villains. So the first step was really like finding the books, the stories that I felt represented me. And then once we started like skimming the surface, and of course there were some very amazing resources that I was able to tap into. The first is my parents' library, books that they've carried across oceans that they deemed themselves were important and necessary to pass on to the next generation. But also readings from the classrooms, classes that I was taking that opened my mind, reading Edward Said for the first time, for example, and being able to articulate this feeling that I was thinking about the misrepresentation that I was constantly being, you know, confronted with. So for me, books are a source that I always seek. And then, yeah, the words, the stories themselves.
For me, I don't know what was the question, but I'm gonna try to answer it again. But yeah. Well, for me, I think it's important to go back to like what is archiving. So for me personally, I didn't know that was a thing. I just knew that I like to take picture. I have a bunch of friends that's photographer and all that, but my background is in fashion. So for me, I think when we talk about representation, since I was in fashion back in 2010, so it's all about like pop culture and all like the, you know, white model, white designer, like it's everything around me was like basically white. So when I first started be interested in archiving and then really try to figure out like where are like the Black women in the fashion world, that's where I was like, oh, we need to create our own stuff. So that's how I started. Basically, we started with Never Was Average. Back in 2016, I was like, I'm over this conversation around representation. I'm gonna do my own thing, but I'm not a photographer. So I was just asking a bunch of friends like, hey, I have this project that I wanna do. It's called the Woman Power. And for me, just to make sure that everything that you see online, that's what at the time it was like the where like Instagram was kind of popular, just to create like content because I was like, there's so many beautiful projects, but I don't see myself, and I don't see my sister, I don't see my mom, I don't see my friend. So I'm like, okay, let me just like create something else. So with that, we started to like create photo project editorial just for fun. We didn't have money, we didn't pick anyone, but we are just like, we have this idea, let's try to do this. And then I guess when we first started to do that, we're like, okay, there's a conversation online, but how can we create that conversation in person? So that's how we start the Brotherhood Sisterhood, basically, just to like continue this ongoing conversation about, yes, representation, but now since we are in community that we don't see ourselves in the media and all that, let's create our own space. So we were there to like, we were talking about mental health, care, yes, representation, racism, it's like different topic that usually we're not including those type of conversations. So I'm like, I'm not gonna wait, we're action people. So I'm like, I'm just gonna do it. And this is how we started thinking about archiving, because I'm like, this is stuff that people need to hear, because we have our own perspective and there's so many gems and everyone has different stories. And I was like, everyone needs to listen to it, whether you're a Black person or not. So that's just basically how I see archiving long term. And also now that we're working on project actually including archiving and specifically in the Black communities. And I'm thinking there's so many archive from way back, I wasn't even born, that it's just now that I know about that. It doesn't make sense, because when we think about history and how can I say that, like to learn about your history, but also to learn what have been done in the past and how we can move forward, we also need to understand what happened in the past. But if you don't know, well, you don't know what you don't know, right? So for me, I think it's important to like, yes, be interested in archiving, but also explaining in the community that we want to work with. So they don't even understand what archiving is, so we just want to make sure that when we think about that, we also think about like the one that's missing in this archiving stuff. I don't know if I answered the question, but
You did, thank you.
Yeah, I think when I think of archiving and the way that we started archiving, honestly, for me, she was actually the one that opened up my awareness to the importance of archiving. I kind of feel if we're talking about this work that we're all doing collectively and individually towards creating a better world for our communities, I kind of feel like my observation is that I kind of feel this conversation is fragmented because we always feel like we're starting from zero, and I think when you're able to archive, you're able to pass down information and pass down also expertise to the next generation so they don't have to start over, and obviously, there's this thing for me where it's also about belonging as well, like because I'm born and raised here in Montreal, and I've never felt connected to the Canadian culture, and for me, I was always looking like, south of the border, like what's going on in the States. When I would turn on the TV, or I would, get on my phone and watch content or anything like that, I would never refer to Canadian contents or Canadian storytellers because they weren't telling my stories. The reality that I was living, the people within my environment, I couldn't see them within the culture. So I feel like when she started introducing me to archiving, I felt that it was important for other people living the same reality as me, that they have references that speaks to them and speak to their reality. And I also believe that it is a powerful tool that you could utilize against the current narrative and the dominating narrative. And for me, another word that comes to mind is this word, la souveraineté narrative, like it comes from indigenous communities. I learned that from them. And it's giving you ownership in terms of who get to tell these stories, right? And which stories are important to a community. And I kind of feel like that the decisional power should always be within the community, and the institution shouldn't have to decide what gets to make it as a document of history. So when you're looking at what is the Canadian experience for the BIPOC community in Canada, where do we go to get that information? You know, you can't really rely on the institution. So that's why I feel it's important, like whether you're capturing moments with your camera, your recording moments, your writing, anything that you do in your archiving becomes a key piece within history that you can pass down to your family. And I think archiving the memories of your family is super important. You know, so it's not just a question of, you know, contributing to the cultural scene, but I think as a community, it becomes something that is so necessary for us to preserve our sense of identity.
Just simple day-to-day archiving.
Yeah,
Our social
100%.
media accounts. It makes me think of that. It's almost like we're self-archiving ourselves. Thank you for that. Okay, so self-generating our own narratives instead of relying on the institutions to speak and tell our stories for us.
For superboat people, I think there are several starting points for our own archival practice. Eva's onboarding in the collective is a bit later in the process because we were created around what 2021, 2022. So tu peux partager ta propre perspective sur les choses. From our perspective, what's interesting is actually is that superboat people, like the initial roots were created in Concordia as part of a research project. So back in early 2010s, the SHRC, they used to have a program called the CURA, so Community University Research Alliance, and the Department of History and Professor Stephen High started a project that was called Montreal Life Stories. And the objective of that project that lasted for 5 years was to collect the récits de vie of communities that had been affected by war, genocide, mass conflict. So we onboarded that project like as early 20s, don't know nothing students. And we sort of learned our craft of archiving like through the university and through oral history practice and through being in the community as well, as you know, doing a oral history project within communities can be riddled with all kinds of like internal relational challenges. So our practice, I think, is informed about how we relate to other folks in the community, but also how we work with institutions and marginally how we interact with how our work interacts with the public as well. But so we can expand on that later, but that's a bit that would be my short answer. And for superboat people, fast forward, the project that we did at Concordia, we considered that it needed to continue. So superboat people is a bit the child of I was about to say the child of Stephen High, but the second phase, yeah, the second iteration of Montreal Life Stories, and we decided to include Cambodian, Lao, and Vietnamese communities, considering they have a similar story of origin, I would say. As refugees, as survivors of war, as people that has been framed in a certain way by the Canadian, by colonial powers.
Hi. I really like what you all share. I think it resonates a lot with our work. And from my perspective, I'm not an artist. I'm more a community organizer, social researcher. And what I see that what you mentioned, it talks about the scale of the archive or the different levels of archiving. And I feel that in our work, archive is like a pretext to open a space of dialogue so people can share about the meaning. And in that sense, any type of archive could be relevant. You know, it could be just a family photo album, even if it's not from your own family. You can feel really connected to that album for many reasons, or it could be like a newspaper, what we have, a newspaper article about a specific historical event. So that for me is really important to mention, because I think we use archive to open a space of dialogue. And in the project that Remy mentioned, we had that discussion, intergenerational discussion about different interviews we made with people from a Cambodian background who arrive in Montreal. And what we saw, it opened so much interesting discussion that people didn't have at home because they didn't have the opportunity. And this moment, that was a special workshop during the project that Remy mentioned, the Montreal Life Story project. It also helps create the project that Eva Luan will talk about.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think my own artistic practice also stemmed from like the lack of representation growing up in Montreal, like in the like 90s in Saint Michel, like I think on TV, like we couldn't see each other anywhere. And also coming from like a mixed race background, I always felt a bit odd with like my white family, or always kind of a bit the stranger, like the black duckling, something feeling like this. And also growing up in Montreal, feeling like you had to assimilate more, like you wanted to be like your white friends and like really integrate into like white culture. I feel that it erased lots of our relationship to our family histories. I think it led me to kind of disconnect with my dad, with his history, with our culture. And through my artistic practice, I was able to reopen discussion with my dad, with my family. And like we're talking about like intergenerational histories that are also linked to like colonialism, displacement, and war. And that's how the project, What Traveled Through Us, came about. It's kind of that mix of like oral history and artistic practice. When I met with Remy and Marie-Ève, we had that feeling and intention to bring on board people so that they could also discover their own family histories. So it was creating a project that would facilitate this kind of personal journey, but within a group. So we've created a cohort of like, the first year was 15 people of Lao, Cambodian, and Vietnamese descent that joined the project. We had like first generation, second gen, and like 1.5. So people that arrived in Canada very young, but went through the school system. And we gave them workshop with artists of the diaspora, 10 workshops throughout a full year, where we would encourage them to do an interview with a family member. And then we've also invited artists so that they could craft their own story. So it was really about like giving back the tools to people, to non-artists, to reclaim their own stories and then to create an artwork with it. And then we were also partnering with Articule, an artist run center on the Plaza Saint-Hubert. And our group were able to get a vitrine exhibition show throughout the summer. So I also gave those people like an amazing opportunity to showcase their work, but also to be in dialogue and to meet people through the pretext of art. For me, like art is almost like an alibi to do political work. It's like a pretext. It's like a way to bring people together. And we kind of created our living archive. Like people would go and do interview with their family member, bring found object that was related to their family history. We had a very powerful project from a participant. She inherited
the spoon her grandmother carried through the Khmer Rouge regime. Like they were not allowed to carry anything, but she stick to that spoon and like she brought it out in the camp and like through all of the different places she moved to finish in Canada. So like just that spoon was just so powerful and with the storytelling of it. So we're trying like to bring like those archive and family histories into today's to create like a storytelling representation, but also a space for people to reconnect and empower themselves.
Thank you. Yeah, so what I'm hearing is different communities are really experimenting with different methods, whether it be through books, through music, art, oral history projects, archiving conversations, photographs, family photographs, just daily activities in ways that allow them to see themselves, express themselves, reconnect with our heritage, our communities, and also engage politically sometimes, or just tell our stories in our ways. So we're going to move on to the next question, and feel free to just answer spontaneously. It doesn't have to be one after the other. You don't have to answer the question too, just because, yeah, we're short on time. So the next question is about how we evolve in time. So this is also an invitation to look at ourselves, our own archives, and how we've evolved, because Never Was Average and We Are the Medium are over 10 years old. Superbook People, I think it's like 4 years old, 3, 4. Stay Curious Magazine, we're like 5. But at the same time, these projects, you know, they've been a long time in the making. And these collective projects, they emerge from us, they grow with us, they change us. So looking at your work through time, what have been some big transformative moments for you, or surprising moments? I'm curious.
I think that for us, I think we kind of realized that what we were doing was important, but we didn't know how much it was. And then now it's been almost 10 years, and I always like think about like how people felt during, if it's an exhibition, panels, conference, conversation, whatever, like how just one thing, it's either like, I don't know, whatever they saw or whatever they felt, it's like when they share it to me, like in, let's say like, for example, aujourd'hui, it's their feeling is there. It's like, yo, you're doing something and it made me think about this, or I want to do this. So I think now we were intentional, but we didn't have the word intentional. But now it's like everything that we do is intentional. And I think at first, obviously, when you start a project, it's always personal, right? You always want to like, I want to do this and I want to change this. But now I think, and you can also share a bit after that, but I think that now in what we realize, like co-creation is everything, because I think like for us, it's like we are like I don't know how to explain, like we have the platform, we might have the connection, we have maybe the resources, but I don't know how to say in English, mais comme ça sert à rien if the people is not there, you know, like if there's no feedback, you know. So I think what changed is really like making sure that everything that we do is in co-creation with whatever community we're working with. That's super important. And for myself personally, now I think that I don't want to work on anything if there's not a co-creation part of it. So that's, for me, I think that's what changed. Before I was mostly thinking about like how we can collaborate or how we can create something that people want to like be part of. But now I'm like, no, I want people to be part of it at the beginning. So this is just personally.
Yes, un bon point. I think for us also is coming to the realization that like what we currently need right now is systems, new models, new practices, tangible tools. I think for us, we spent the last 8 years just trying to understand and yeah, like understand the infrastructure, the system that is failing us every single day. and understand that now we've been noticed for a couple of years now that the system isn't going to change. It is perfectly designed, you know. So we're not trying to change it. It produces the results and the outcome that it was designed to produce. So trying to change it is just, for us, wasting energy and time and resources. So we rather build a new model and get people on board who have a similar vision, a similar understanding, and we're just trying to lead what that movement can look like. We don't have the answers, but we will create a space where those people that have the knowledge and the experience and those creative ideas, we're going to create that space where they feel comfortable sharing with one another. That's what we want to do. And I feel also for us, like in the beginning, we were really about understanding what an inclusive culture really meant and what an inclusive culture can look like. So we spend a lot of time, again, like educating ourselves, testing models, co-creation models. Because again, you can't say that you're about community, but you don't know how to work with the community, you know, in a tangible way. Because it's also about relinquishing power to those communities. So how do you go about doing that, but also being sustainable? You know, so you have to navigate through these questions that are like, we've been able, like today we can say that we have an infrastructure and a model that we're ready to test and roll out, but it took 8 years to get here. So so now what we're understanding of the work that we're doing is that in order to have true inclusivity, you need ownership. Without that, it's not sustainable. So we're at this chapter of our lives, building ownership.
A lot of what you said really resonated with me, and it also made me realize we're all kind of on similar paths, similar realizations, and the collectivity, for lack of a better word, is like, I feel it. There's something like not tangible that's connecting us, I think, at this very specific global moment where, and maybe it started during the pandemic and now it's becoming very, very clear with the genocide in Gaza, is that systemic change is like, it's a must. It's a must for our own, like, you know, survival. And so we're definitely I think in a very specific moment right now where the artists, the writers, the people with the wider imagination have to start really putting their heads together. And there's no blueprint, like there is no blueprint really. But there's also the rich archive that we have as a resource that can help kind of lead us into what works and what doesn't. For me, the big transformational moment was Maktaba. I'd say opening, Maktaba as a space, as an offering to the city, for me was a chance to put a lot of these theories and things that I had been thinking deeply about. I go deep into them, and Take Care of Yourself, where I really wanted to talk about care as a practice and about how we come from communities of care, yet we don't always know how to articulate that, or the fact that we have to articulate it is kind of, where we're at in this diasporic moment. So taking that theory and then putting it into practice for me was, I think, a chance to say, look, it's possible. We can do this. Like, it's actually possible. And yes, there may be no blueprint, but we have like legends that have been doing this before us. We have people to look back to. We have the Black Panther Party who have been doing, incredible work for community and empowerment for generations before us. We have stories of survival from our grandparents and generations past, and we have so much to offer. And then we have the new generation that's actually really inspiring once you tap into they were like one step ahead in terms of systemic change, because they're like, yeah, it's broken, so we're not going to fix it. We're just gonna do it differently. So that's for me, that was the big moment was like, yeah, okay, well, instead of trying to take a space in somebody else's corner, take a corner in somebody else's space, just make our own space. And then the challenge is really thinking about sustainability, but we could talk about that. That's a whole other question.
I'm just gonna chime in real quick. Your question was about time, right? And I don't know about the other creatives on the panel, but for me, when I get tasked to do something in collaboration for other people, is really when I start thinking about historical research leading up to the moment in which I'm doing the project. So, for example, if I was to take the example of what I did with A Tribe Called Red, you know, at the point in history in which I was invited to create this narrative piece for a larger body of work for the Black community, for the Indigenous community, and the Arab community, I started asking myself questions about my responsibility before stepping in. And what are the images that I want to put out into the world that have never existed before, that either challenge the ones that have challenged us or ones that I want my children to see, to inspire them to see new visions of the future, right? So in a way, I try to remove myself from the present and really dig into the past and the future while practicing in order to create things that can be long lasting beyond the moment. And I think as people were constantly scrambling to catch up to the daily violence or the daily injustice that's occurring to our communities, and we rarely have time to think about the future, right? We're constantly burying ourselves in grief or in process. So I always think about the future and the past while I'm living in the present, so that I can create something that's long lasting and hopefully can affect somebody after me. And, you know.
I just want to say there's a term for this. It's I believe it's a Zulu term, and it's Sankofa. It's basically the exact, in one word, looking to the past to make sense of the present, to imagine a future. It's incredible. It's a term.
Thanks for sharing. And from Superboat people, anyone want to add something? The question was, looking back through time, your own work, what have been some major turning points or transformative moments or surprising ones?
Well, there are several points that have been shared that I find interesting. Hearing Harry say that, oh, we have a system that has been tested and that we're now able to roll out. We're zero into this at Superboat people, at least from my perspective, in the sense that we're always like picking up new things and just trying things out. Some things stick, some things don't stick. So I'm really comment on ça?
Il est en français.
Ben quoi? Admiratif, mais ça me donne vraiment envie quand j'entends quelqu'un dire, ah, nous autres, on est rendu là. Puis là, je suis comme, ah, shit, on va-tu y arriver? Anyway, so that's just a personal sentiment. I think a turning point that was very important for us recently was actually the commemorative programming we've did to commemorate the 50th of the fall of Saigon, Phnom Penh, and Vientiane. So we worked really hard starting last year to put a set of events that would make sense, not only for second gens, but quasiment plus for first gen, to do homage for their past, for what they've built here in the community. And it has really been structural in the sense that we were sort of able to, I think, shift the sort of narrative or discourse that you would hear about boat people, about Southeast Asian refugees and all that. And the main tool we've used to do that was an exhibition within an institution again. We like institutions, I don't know why, but we always work within them, but also outside of them. Yeah. So it was with the MEM, the Centre des Mémoires Montréalaises. And the name of the exhibition, well, the title of the exhibition was, what was it? More Than Good Refugees, 50 Years of Cambodian, Lao, and Vietnamese Presence in Montreal. So there's the big history. There's the immigration history aspect of it, but like that's more what I want to share about is the impact it has had on the individual members of the community, of parents, children, of our own relationship with elders that used to look down at us before, and now they sort of consider us as equal. Sort of, yeah. But the one thing that has been super important is people saying, after having seen the exhibition, like it was so beautiful. I've never seen something curated like that spoke about my own condition or situation. I went at the exhibition with my parent, my uncle, and we were for the first time able to have a discussion on this. C'est comme si fou le poème. And then speaking about our relationship with First Gen, it's funny because now they know that we can do good stuff, like quality stuff, and they're like, oh, okay. They're not that bad, actually. They're not that
Not lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now it's interesting because for the last few months, for example, the elders they will call us if they need something. So for them it has become sort of a an automatism to sort of check on what's happening with second gens, to sort of roll out their own activities or their own ideas. So that's a really nice turning point, I find.
Okay. I guess what I'm hearing, if I'm integrating everything, is I'm hearing that we started really being intentional about creating like participative, inclusive, co-creative spaces that never was average. Then there was the creation of a space like Maktaba where we can share knowledge, put care into practice, and then create these events that are inclusive of different generations as well. So I think that's leading us to third question, which is intending community care and engagement. So I also know that creating intentional community gatherings and programs, it takes work. So it takes planning, a lot of care, a lot of intention. And it's a sensitive approach because we want to create spaces where that foster really a sense of safety, of dignity, of belonging, of engagement, that challenge attitudes that can be shaped by all the isms, racism, ableism, ageism, sizeism, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, and religion-based discrimination, amongst other forms of ignorance, hatred, and fear. So my next question is, how do you go about programming, curation, bringing people together in a way that fosters that sense of connection, whether it be with themselves, with other people, with cultural heritage, or with larger struggles? And if you want, you can also answer it this way, because we know this work takes a lot of, it's very tiring, it's very emotionally demanding. How do you take care of yourself when you feel like you're burning out, or when battery is low? So how do you do it? How do you
That's a whole other battle.
How do you do this kind of work? And also, yeah, how do you keep yourself sustainable?
I think I've been tasked to do the programming at Maktaba, the external programming. Although I work closely with Sundus to do it, and obviously her ideas are also very much infused in it. But I kind of come in and build the design of the programming for our year. And we usually go from spring to winter, and then when the winter hits, we kind of go into hibernation to, recoup, but also to just think about what we want to do in the next season. So when the flowers come out, hence our logo has flowers in it, very much, we call it flowers to the people. That's how we design it. So I think the challenge is, number one, is to not approach programming like open call, everybody come, you're in competition, come and show us your ideas, and then we're going to pick and choose because we're the curators, right? I think for us, we immediately look into our creative community that has come across us in our path, and what kind of opportunities they need or what they've needed throughout the time that we've known them, and we pull them in. And then always what I like to infuse into each one of our programming is there somebody who hasn't had an opportunity that I know that first opportunity is the hardest one to break through, right? So I always pull in a youth member in the community that requires a first opening and create a safe space for them to just try something out that they want to try out. whether it be somebody that's never DJ'd before, or somebody that wants to come do photos, or somebody that wants to draw at an event, or, you know, we always try to do that. And then in addition to that, we create closed events that invite specific members in the community to come and be quiet with each other, or to write for an hour and not really speak to each other, or to eat with each other, you know? So there's this like three-pronged approach that creates opportunity, opens up space for somebody new, and then also allows for that rest, or that time to just have a human connection with somebody and not be an event that's public facing, you know?
Tout qu'est-ce que tu as dit. I just love how they work. Like I'm a fan.
Same.
But I think that, and maybe it goes back to the last question that you asked, intention again. Maybe I can give like a tangible example, what we did in 2022 Culture Fund. I feel like there's a bunch of like programming that we did that is good, but I think this one was like one of like the best one so far. It's a culture farm. So what we did is that we so it was like after COVID, so everything started opening, and then we were still doing conversation online, and you know, all the conversation for us is a way of gauging like what the people want and also what we also want. So basically, when we think about programming or activity, it's we're always in a place where we have to test it first, and then after that we're like, okay, this worked for us because on nos propres test, I guess, I don't know how to say that, tester, I guess, whatever. And then, but this for Culture Farm, what happened is that we learned that everyone was, they needed like real connection in person, not just like conversation online, because everything was online during COVID, but like experience people all together. And a lot of people felt lonely, even though they were like with friends and family, they felt like they were like disconnected with like the outside. And then so we started like doing a component of conversation, and that's where we first started mixing people, because our conversation were separate, so men and women. And for that we mix everyone together, and also we added like well-being kind of activity. We call it self-care Sundays. So what we did is that, okay, we know a bunch of people that's wellness facilitator. People, some of them are well known, some of them they first started. Like I'm thinking about Tariq la Box, like, you know, he first started, and we're like, okay, let's create a programming where all activity are free, and we make sure that the facilitator get paid. And I think that was one of the best way of like seeing like how like we have some contact, they have some resources. Just make sure that everyone can, in a way, be part of that programming, even though it was me and Harry that thought about it. But I don't know how to explain. Comme je sais pas comment expliquer.
Laisse-moi essayer d'expand. Premier point, je pense que like le mindset qu'on a autour de la programmation. So for us, even the term programming, our mindset is deprogramming. Yeah. You know, and we're trying to relinquish that programming to the community. And what we're doing is it's like a social initiative where we're trying to respond to a social issue. And what she was explaining about COVID, everybody was impacted by COVID, including ourselves. And we were like, what are we doing to navigate through this? So we had, you know, stumbled across like some mindfulness tools, thanks to Hannah and her curiosity. And we started testing those tools with us. Like, is it working? And once we found out it was working, then we understood that this is a tool that can empower yourself to navigate through this social crisis that we're going through. So we created an initiative to share those tools with the community. So that was the intention behind this, like programming, the specific programming. But that's how we go about everything that we do. It's important to understand that this is like it's a personal work. Like you have to work on yourself as an individual and then you have to show and prove, and then you have to lead by example. So I kind of feel like the best programming comes for those who are actually doing the work, right? And that's what we try to, every time we come up with a new programming, a new experience, is because we tested it ourselves and we understand the impact and we document it. So that's like basically like our whole approach to programming.
And also, I want to add that's super important. I think I said it before, but everything that we create, it's because there's a need. That's why we're always in conversation. I always say at Harry, like, I need to have conversation with the people. I need to understand, like, if, like, what's happening, what's the different perspective, like, what do they want? Because I know what I want, mais j'ai pas la solution, right? So every time we have a conversation, I'm like, oh, you know what? I think that people need more mindfulness. They need to know how to breathe and just be. And after that, we create something. And I'm like, I'm not the only one that has the answer. Yes, I'm a mindfulness facilitator, but I'm not the mindfulness facilitator. So that's why I say, like, we're always in collaboration, co-creation, and looking like who's doing what. That's not qu'ils ont pas la plateforme pour, because we know Montreal, it's always the same person, right? But we try to like do like something different.
Like another thing that's super important in our approach is that for us, anything that we do at Never Was Average is about building relationships. So programming is about building relationships. We're not going in there thinking that, oh, we need the best DJ because that DJ is going to bring us XYZ. Like, no, we need the best DJ because this is the best person to set the mood that we need for our attendees to connect with each other. You know, and what we mean also by building relationship is helping our guests, our community build a better relationship with themselves and with others. So I feel like when you leave our one of our experience or an activity that we designed, if you leave feeling better connected to yourself or better connected to your community, then we did our job.
Can I add a few things? Because my mind's going like a lot of thoughts, a lot of reflections. I want to mention two things, and this is based on the past 3 years of doing a lot of programming for Maktaba. I want to say that I've realized, or I've come to understand, that there's no such thing as a safe space. There are only safer spaces. And that's what the only thing I can strive for is to create a slightly safer space than it is outside or on the streets or in the institution or in the classroom. So that's the first thing I want to acknowledge. And the second thing I want to acknowledge is that it's about organic growth and it's about organic relationships, and you can never really force anything, in my opinion, when it comes to collaborations or when it comes to working with somebody or inviting somebody into your space. So whenever, like, at least for my work, it's very holistic. So Maktaba is very much an extension of my home, and the way that I treat it. I don't treat it as a place that's outside of my personal, like auric field. It's a part of me. It's an extension of my practice. And so the way that I see it is that, yes, it is a public space, but how can I protect this space also for myself? But how can I have people feel protected when they're in it? And so, we do what we need to do the same way that we would approach our home, and we pray over it, or we set intentions on it, or we burn incense and smoke it out, and make sure that if ever somebody comes in with a lot of bad energy, you're going to open the window, and to keep that space clear of that kind of negativity, because there's a lot around us. And so, I just wanted to point those things out. There are things that maybe we take for granted, but I want to just point it out because it's something that, it's underappreciated as an act. Like, we think public and private, right? But what if the public is also private? And that's very much become something that I've understand by running a space that's so public facing, but that is very personal as well.
Super boat people, do you want to add anything?
I mean, everybody knows making community takes time and like intention, and it requires a lot of involvement. And I think one of the main project we have at Superboat is what travels through us, and I see us as facilitator of community because we give time. Like it's a project based over like 10 months period. People come back, and it really throughout every month we invite artists, and then they share their own practice and their démarche. And throughout every month, we see like the tightening of the bonds, like you said, there's no safe space. It's just like co-constructed, and by allowing and creating like a space where those things can emerge. And like I really see us as like facilitator of community. And so most of the time it's like 10, 15 people that don't know each other, that also come from different background, non-artists, some artists, but very varied. And then by the end, when there's the exhibition, and like you've seen it and you've met a few of our cohort, there's something very magical that happens because they live a common experience of like sharing and like going through like deep memories and like remembering their history or their parents and like their like a bit of their traumas too. So it's very powerful, and we can see like it has like a very lingering effect on the cohort. Like people now organize together, they've joined Superboat. Like it's also a way, it's like for me, I see it as a very long process. Like who can afford to join like a 10 months project? Like every Saturday the commitment is very strong, and we also see it, I feel it like the commitment, it is equally transformative. Like at the end of those 10 months, like the cohort is has transformed immensely, and then we see they engage in other like community projects. So yeah, I think having this like time is so important.
I agree. One point that I want to raise is we have a different collective with different age. We are pretty younger in Zurich as your collective. And in my perspective, when you have an idea and you want to start something and raise an issue to the public, you have to invest really and work really hard and don't think too much about yourself. But if you want to make it last, then after that, there's another time that you have to change a bit and slow down and be more patient. But at the beginning, I think it's really counterintuitive. You just go and do what you think is the best and don't think too much, because otherwise you won't do anything. So
I just want to add what you said about like being a facilitator. I think that's the best word to use. All here what we're doing, it's really like we're facilitator, and everyone can be a facilitator. Actually, you just need to understand like what's your role, what your skills, and what can you create, because you don't have to wait for someone to do something. So I just love that you use the word facilitator.
Okay, so what I'm hearing a lot is like when you go in with the intention of facilitating like a relationship building, when you treat your space like your home, this is very conducive to creating these spaces where people feel safer and included. And when I go to your events, I see people who really wish that they had something like this when they growing up, or just happy to stumble upon spaces like this where they maybe people who felt isolated in educational settings or casual social settings, or in what they see in the media, and then they find your place, and there's like this, I'm so glad I had this. I wish I had this growing up. And people who want to get involved too, who want to get engaged. So thank you for creating these spaces. Clearly your intention is manifesting. So I think we have time for one more question before we open it up to the Q&A. Let's do, okay, well, okay, let's maybe, let's do legacy then. So, no, so Never Was Average, you've worked as consultants with different brands, different companies, and We Are the Medium also works, with different artists as a creative house and production hub, and Super Bowl People is more like nonprofit model, right? Working with various institutions. What do you hope to change, through your work? Because you leave a mark on the organizations or people that you work with. What legacy do you hope to leave for the future?
Professor?
Well, I approach things very holistically. I teach, I rap and make music. We make video. We have a physical space. We make merch. We collaborate with other artists. And then we also consult for brands and museums and different spaces. We've done all of these. And I think we have to look at things holistically. We can't really just, for us anyway, targeting one space is not enough. Like, out of the 200 students I teach every semester, maybe 1%, 2% of them will leave with a changed heart or a mind, right? For every 50 people that walk into the shop, maybe one person will have a book that they read that'll change their hearts. And then for every thousands of people that are at my shows, maybe 2 people will realize something and go research when they leave, right? So I believe in this like multifaceted approach. And I think when it comes to I don't think about legacy while I'm alive, right? The legacy is something that comes after we leave this place and people look back at your work. So I think we just got to do the work and just put in as much work as we can when we have these minutes that we have on this earth, right? And then eventually the next generation will figure out what that legacy, what the purpose of the work was, and it'll just inspire more. It's a chain reaction. What we needed, we had to develop the confidence in ourselves and the bravery to step out in the space and do it and not be afraid of the repercussions, right? And then ultimately that creates more and more of that, and then that change will come, right? It might not come in our lifetime, and that's okay.
For me, it's motherhood and being a mother, being a parent, and teaching the next generation the things that I wish I would like to leave as a trace. And I do that actually in my daily life, but I also do that in my work. So when for example, my books, I wrote them for my kids. I never, I really honestly didn't think it would be read by more than just a small handful of people. I feel very privileged and blessed that, more than a handful of people have read it. But that's really the ultimate for me. It's, yeah, shout out Shams and Yusra. They're in here.
Bonus, I feel like for us, like, I think it's about like the next Harry and Joe. It's about when they have this awareness where they want to start the work, they have a reference point. They're not starting from zero. I think for me, it's about also shifting the culture and remembering that culture should be for the community, and it should be there to empower the community and not the other way around. I like the fact that you mentioned the work that we do with brands, institutions, and for us, is to remember that they don't own the culture, and they shouldn't be the one who dictates the culture. You know, I feel like I see so many artists who have an authentic message, but they're being suppressed because they have to utilize their channel, their platform, because they have their own agenda, whether it's political, economic. But us as artists, our agenda is to tell our stories. And I feel like if we're able to bring a reality where our community and artists are empowered, I feel like this is the legacy that we want to leave. And to us, this is what we mean by an inclusive culture. It's really a culture that is being led by the community and not by these, again, institutions and brands and such. So, yeah.
No, but I can add, like, in terms of legacy, I just want to make sure that everyone know that they have the power in themselves, be critical of everything, challenge everyone. This is my legacy, because I always say that, like, if you don't like the answer, go find another answer, ask, challenge yourself, just challenge everyone, and then this is it. Voilà.
Yeah, legacy is a big word, but I'll say like the best reward we hear from our work is when somebody say, okay, I tried that new recipe, I start growing my veggies in my garden. So we often see ourselves as a living lab, just trying to create a space so people are not shy of trying to experiment with their own culture. So I think the legacy would be like, okay, I'm not shy, or I'm less shy to try to live my culture.
I agree with what Marie-Ève just said. I don't know why, but I ticked when Viet used the word dignity before, because we don't hear it that much, but when you hear it, it's like nice. But I think like, at least if I take this year as a point d'evaluation, as an evaluation point, I think the legacy, at least for what we've done this year, was to dignify our communities at different levels. And this can be with say the public eye. It can also be within communities itself. But say for the What Travels Through Us project, what I've also shared about how people have reacted with the exhibition. Like, I think something I think we did quite well, and that's super important, and I always repeat when I speak about the What Travels Through Us project, is just learn to love your goddamn parents, you know. And it's so difficult to do when you have that background of being a community of survivors, of living with trauma every day, with living with all kinds of weird ways of being that you don't understand. And so I think that's an important legacy. And just to give an example of what that means, because it's a bit like vague what I'm saying. For example, in the exhibition we did, and maybe going back to the archival work also we're doing, we went back into 50 years of Cambodian Lao, Vietnamese history in Montreal, sort of identifying what are still important institutions within the community, and we were able to dig things that like people like never knew first gen did. For example, like a first co-op system by the Laotian communities. They have like over 200 to 250 units for say low-income families that have been running for 30-40 years. We always hear from second gen, oh, our parents are conservatives, they don't know what's progress, what's da da da. But when you actually dig, like, just take like I don't know, a week asking around just what people have done like in the 70s and the 80s and in the 90s. You hear like lots of initiatives that actually look like what we're trying to do right now. So I think that's a legacy of sort of inviting younger folks to sort of better understand what first gen have done and how this paves the way for the work we're actually doing and the ethics of the work ethics we've also developing through our collectives. So that's an example.
So I guess to wrap up, what I'm hearing is, well, first of all, we're being documented now, so we're the living archives for tomorrow. Just a thought. And sometimes it's not, when you think of legacy, what I'm hearing, like from what you're saying, Yassin, is that you don't always know exactly what you're moving towards, but you're being fully yourself. You're giving it your all. You're being brave. You're being courageous. You're challenging the status quo. So you're leaving that legacy. You're showing the next generation, other people, that you can do that as well. Showing love for your parents, a legacy of self-esteem and dignity, and being proud of your heritage, your culture, allowing yourself to experiment. I think we're showing everyone, the next generation who will follow, that they can all do that. And I think that's really beautiful. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, all the panelists, for today. And we'll open it up to the Q&A, to the public.
We'll just run up there and grab one of the mics. Bertie, you can do that. And if you have a question, just raise your hand. We'll run a microphone over to you so that anyone joining us online can hear. Thank you.
Anybody have a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. First of all, thank you both to the panelists and to the host for facilitating such a nurturing conversation. I have a question that is very short, but I think very big. And I'm not addressing it to anyone in particular, but feel free to answer it also just by a singular word or feeling. The question is, what is community? And I'm asking this to give you some context and maybe also time to think, because I'm from the Netherlands. And what I see is that Dutch universities are also sort of co-opting or mobilizing the language of building community, engaging community for their marketing strategies. And I guess I'm sort of searching for ways of saying, you know, what universities are doing in that sense is not building community. We actually have a group of, you know, community builders here. What they are doing is building community. So I guess I wonder what makes a community for you.
One of us should answer this. Just one.
I have one word. It's actually a hyphenated word, so it's two words. Value alignment. Sharing the same values. And I think in today's world, it's very clear to me, being on the right side of history, being able to hold your values and know how to express them, but also how to find people who share those same values.
This is my favorite subject, so we need another panel. But one word that I have related to community, and it's true that everyone just used that word and now there's nothing. And I'm thinking about like what I've learned through trauma-informed practices. So I think community, you need to feel, and that's safe, because I don't like that word. Is you can't make something safe or someone safe, but like when you are in a place where trauma-informed is in the community, the approach, everyone can feel like welcome and be themselves and don't shy away of who they are. So I don't know, my mind goes to like just like trauma-informed approaches when you want to build a community or when you want to build in community. So I don't know if I answer your question, but we can talk after that.
All right, so the best way I can answer this question, for me, a community is only as strong as the family within that, the families within those communities. So for me, community is about relationships. It's about supporting relationships. So yeah, but that would be another panel, honestly.
I think it's the way I would answer is the way you've asked the question. So universities have been using the word community to for me, there's two ways. I think like building community is one sense of it, but it's also how people are using that term. In Cambodian, there's a term called it's a samaki, and that means solidarity. And people use it extensively within the Cambodian community. And I always find this, while growing up, very suspect. Like who uses community or solidarity the most? They're the worst. That's my so that's just a joke, eh? But everyone has their use and their instrumentalization of community, and I think it's very important to sort of unpack how people frame it.
Yeah, as an anthropologist, I will add that community doesn't exist in an entity, so it's more practicing community. So it's about relationship, trying to share, trying to get along with people, even if they have different views, different opinions. So that would be more about practicing or community, if I can say.
One last word, I think, to reflect on everything is also grassroots is also what links us together, is like bottom up. Also, like we're sharing powers, we're navigating powers, we're not trying to exploit or profit. We're also like it's for and by people. Like we try to tell our stories to make it first and foremost for us also. So it's not like for somebody to exploit or capitalize on. And it's also transformative. Like we want it to be able like to transform the system. Like we know it's broken, we want to push it. And yeah, I mean, I hope this is, I mean, I can see this is what we're striving for, communities and not those like marketable, expendable communities.
Tu m'as fait penser à quelque chose. So community is a resource, and I can also tell you what community is not. Community is not commerce. Community cannot be commercialized. So within the context that you're in, is to always remember that if you're in a commercial context, that word community is not community. All right, that's an audience.
I'll just add by saying, I think community is meeting people where they are. Yeah. No pressure. It can start between two people and just being able to be there for a person in that moment. And that can grow into a larger experience of togetherness, because really our collective consciousness is what we tend to forget a lot. And our collective consciousness is our community. So like, just be there for people in whatever way you can, you know?
You created a whole panel.
I think we have time for another question.
Hello. Thank you again for this panel. It was very instructive, and for this wonderful medium exposition. And thank you specifically to Maktaba. I think we spoke a lot about identity and finding yourself. And I wish I knew you guys 10 years ago or 15 years ago. But, oh my God, these are my people. And so thank you for that. I wanted to build up on the question of community. I thought it was an excellent question. And my answer to community is that I find community is also a reaction to adversity. And so back in the days just surviving. You needed a community. Who was going to get the meat? Who was going to take care of the kids? Community now is surviving to protect our identity, not to lose our identity, not to lose our culture. And I think one thing to consider is how do you make sure that community is not divisive? And how do you make sure, and it comes back to integration versus empowerment. So maybe just a question about how to make sure that community is not too divisive in a society that's already very divisive and very identity driven.
My answer is active listening, and that goes back to mindfulness. But I feel like active listening and accountability and self accountability, if that makes sense. Yeah. I feel like we have to understand who we are. And that's, for me personally, if you understand who you are and if you constantly work on yourself to be a better being, you can be part of a bigger community. I don't think that, and okay, c'est un peu confus qu'est-ce que je veux dire là, but I think that you need to understand who you are before asking to be part of a community. And why there's so many like the community fragmented is because like everyone has their own issue, but they don't take time to just try to just figure out why you like that, what's your trauma, do you even understand whatever you have, you know. I think we constantly need to like challenge, or that's why I say challenge ourselves, find the question, the answer, ask question, and just take your time, don't rush, because it's true that that's why when I think about community, everyone wants to gather together because there's always something. But what if there's nothing and you just need to be together? But for that, you really need to like take the time to like be with yourself alone first. But that's another conversation.
I think, you know, especially as coming from a diverse like Arab community, and so many of our countries have so much divisiveness and so many hidden hands and colonial histories that have affected our understanding of who we are, let alone us being in the diaspora and outside of our countries and trying to figure out who we are out here, and then those microcosms interacting here. I think I go to the uncomfortable place right away to challenge that and like break it in order for us to get to a smooth place to be able to get along with each other. So not the conflict, but really go to the issues at hand and be able to have those difficult conversations, whether it be between me and a brother of mine about being men, or, you know, a larger conversation within the Iraqi community or within the Arab community or within the Muslim community, then eventually within the intersectional community. Just having uncomfortable conversations one-on-one is very important, because you start having aha moments that create breakthroughs in order for us to get to the next place. So not to be shy about that, because there's always work to be done, right?
I could add something. Yeah. So the question was, how does well, I think the intro to the question was sometimes coming together comes from a place of facing adversity. And then I think the question, if I understood it correctly, was how does that process, how could not become then divisive, or I think that's how I understood the question. In a society that can be very identitarian and very fragmented and all that. I resonate a lot with Sundus's book, Take Care of Yourself. I think if you put the intention of care and healing in your community organizing, or in the way you come together in the face of struggle at the same time, like care and struggle, then you also you not only organize against perhaps external forces that have exerted oppression upon you, your people, your community, but also you're healing from the impact of that on the community spirit, which sometimes can really if we think of systemic, yes, if we think of systemic racism, if we think of misogyny, if we think of homophobia, transphobia, all the discriminations that really can lead to internalization of these attitudes and destruction from within. So I think if we add the intention of healing and caring while we hold these struggles, then we change both from the inside and the outside, and we're better able to do that work in a solidary way. Voila.
One last thing. Yeah. I was gonna say, to kind of tie this back into archiving, I think we need diversity of stories and diversity of experiences, and it's not one monolith. And this is part of the importance of sharing our own stories and archiving the plethora of stories and experiences that we have within even one community, within, let alone the transcultural experiences that are shared by, for example, subjects of colonial violence and subjects of cultural erasure. And here we are, on indigenous land, where this is a part of not just the past, but the present, and hopefully not the future, So I think there is a good, the bad, and the ugly within all of these conversations. And I think that all of them have equal importance. And we can't shy away from the bad stories and the hardships. The hardships are often, and the struggle are often like the foundation and part of the transformation that is necessary to reach that, the breakthrough moments, and these kinds of gatherings where the wisdom can be shared, where we can look back and reflect. But like I think Joanna and Harry have said, the work has to be done, and the work starts with self, and then it expands outwards. And so my three-pronged always approach of looking at everything is self, community, world. So like from the microcosm to the macrocosm. And I feel like that can be applied to so many things. Thank you for the two really wonderful back-to-back questions that really gave a lot of context.
Yeah, je finis avec parce que ce que tu viens de dire pour moi c'est parfait parce que I feel like as an organizer you have to understand that you also play a role of a facilitator. So your goal is to design a space and a common ground for these diverse perspectives to come and meet. Like that's your duty as an organizer. It's not really to take position, but it's how do you facilitate these conversations and exchanges, because one group alone doesn't have the solution. The opposites have to meet.
If I wrap it up, you want to wrap it up?
I think they want to wrap it up.
You guys want to wrap it up? Should I wrap it up?
We can. I think the idea would then have some time to have some questions just amongst everyone in the space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
I want to just say a few things. I want to thank Yasmin Jiwani, our professor from Concordia that helped us put this archive together. I want to thank you guys for all the help that you put and the care that you put into helping us put the whole archive together in this room. To everybody that showed up, to all the panelists here that are here with us, to Sundus for doing the hard work of putting this together, because I'm not the organized one in this couple, trust me. To Viet for holding us down in this panel. We really appreciate you for coming through, and everybody else. And Shirk, of course, for the support that they've given us to put this together. And Marie, who's been with us since day one, helping us put this together as well. We have our pop-up here for the next 20 minutes. We have to be out of here by 6 sharp, or Doug will probably tackle me down to the floor. Thank you all for coming through, and you can always come see us at the bookshop. Obviously, we have a few events coming up in the next week with some amazing artists that are visiting our city, so just keep plugged. And thank you always for the support that you've given us from day one. We appreciate you.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you so much for coming in, part of the panel. Of course, all of your questions as well. Just gonna let you know, we're gonna close up the Zoom. We're gonna close up the live stream now, but it remains available on our YouTube channel. You should revisit it. You should share it. You should have a fantastic weekend. Thank you so much.